So your line, tell me, I guess, take me through the lap and let's see. We'll look at turn two first,
Hmm.
and tell me what you feel and what you're doing. I guess you kind of do, or you're turning the steering wheel in, and then right before braking, you hold the steering wheel straight. So I'm guessing that you are kind of pointing the car towards the apex.
I used a new line to turn one instead of going close to the wall, so you like get the angle of the car like this compared to the track. I go more on the outside, so I will get a more straight down braking zone than I did before, and that helps a lot on the stability. And I also try then to find where the grip for the corner is, so I can brake hard and meet the apex.
Your braking
Uh,
is very nice. I like it a lot. It's very nice and flat through here, and then you're trailing off. I mean, the braking technique you're showing this week is looks better even compared to the Coda one because this is much more ideal curve. And then looking at the total G here, again, it stays much flatter.
mhm.
You have a little bit more G, of course, when you're going faster. Right now, this is about 200 kph, and then it's okay. It's gonna come down just a little bit, but it's a very good blend between the two. It's very hard not to coast through here because obviously it's a double apex corner, so that's fine. And then the throttle application is good and strong. The second run that you did, like the later runs obviously show a little bit more commitment because I see less of the on throttle, off throttle, on throttle like hesitation.
Mhm.
So that's a little bit better. Um, I do
Yeah.
see. I think I saw that you're kind of seems to be struggling a little bit with turn three.
Oh yeah.
That seems to be a point where you're having trouble, and it's very odd. Like here in this case, like on the fast lap, you have a very long coast, extremely
Mhm.
long. Look, I mean, you're coasting from here to about here. You know, that's or in this case, let's see how much time of coasting compared to this. So this one was 1.4 and zero point 0.8. Which one's 0.8? Okay, so the long one where you coasted a little bit longer is 1.4 seconds. Well, the thing is that they start adding up to each other. So this is like here it'll tell me 2.5 versus 1.3, but that's also adding turn one. Unfortunately, um, I can't just have it tell me for the particular corner. It
Mhm.
really just adds up the entire lapse time worth of coasting. But for this corner, I know that there's no reason to coast that much, so that tells me that something went wrong. But I see in a lot of your laps that you're struggling here, and you're either braking really early or something, but then you end up having long coasts and a lot of hesitation to get back on throttle.
Mhm.
But it's just a little bit weird. I mean, it almost looks like you fell asleep on the throttle and just waited too long.
It's the radius of the corner that's messing with me, I think, because when I think I can go on throttle and said, oh no, and so I probably, as you said, brake too early. So because it's not a 90-degree bend,
Okay,
it
so
looks like a 90-degree bend, but go on.
so I brought up a lap, and this is a comparison. This is going to be a lap that I did in a Porsche Cup car, I think, because that's oh shit, it's not even a Porsche, it's a roof. Yeah.
Ooh.
Even worse. Um, I'm not even sure which pedals I had at this time. Ugh. Let me find another lap. I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
Let's see. I do have a lap in the Porsche Cup car at Leica. So it's not one to one comparable, but let's see. The other day, We don't really have any fast laps from that day. BMW. But the thing is that it doesn't show any laps. 12 megabytes, 14 megabytes.
Excuse me, I just need to use the toilet.
Okay.
Oh, I'm back. Hey.
Okay, I found a lap in a Porsche Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's much better. Cause yeah, fuck that roof car, piece of shit. Okay, so how many laps do we have loaded up? I put in your 13 point, and let's put that one. Let's put this one, and then we'll put mine as a third lap. Okay, so let's look at turn one. So again, it's kind of hard to tell because of the orange, but it's still, yeah, definitely a lot less coasting. I'm gonna brake a lot earlier because I don't have am I on the right Porsche Cup lap? Oh, okay, now it's on the right one. 23. That's a Porsche. Okay, that looks much better because the other one looked weird. Okay, so let's look at that other corner. Obviously, I'm gonna brake much earlier and stuff like that, but here is a big difference. I brake much earlier, and then our lines are also way different. So I brake much earlier. Okay, well, yeah, I'm in a different car, so that's it. But then my coasting is basically from here to here, and then I'm back on the throttle much sooner. So let's look at the steering. Um, it's interesting how you can see the downforce and the grip capability of the GTE car because you see the orange, like it's inside, like I don't have anywhere near the grip of the GTE car. But I start my steering actually way earlier than that to turn in. So I have my steering a little bit straighter and then ultimately go into a corner and I'm steering less. Oh, wait, no, that's the lateral G. My bad. I was looking at the wrong. Okay, no, my steering, I'm holding the steering straighter than you going into the corner. And then when I'm braking and here's my turn in. I guess I'm turning in much earlier than you are. That's what it looks like. My turn in is just a little, not much, but a little bit earlier than yours. So
Mm-hmm.
let's zoom into the turn in. So I'm looking at this point, here is when I'm going off the throttle. So that's the orange line. So I'm holding the steering wheel straighter. And then you're still doing your thing. You have the steering wheel turned a little bit, and at this point you start getting on the brakes. And around the point that you're starting to get on the brakes is the point where I start turning in. So now the orange line is a little bit below yours, and I've already started my turn in, and I reach my maximum point of turn earlier than you do, and then I've already actually gotten on the throttle way back here. And let's look at the thing on the map. Um, so let's zoom out a little bit more and move your
You
face.
You have a much tighter line after turn 3.
Yeah. So the thing is that you leave turn 2, and we're leaving turn 2 the same, but then you are steering the car towards the outside of the track to try to get a straight shot into turn 3, I guess. You're trying to go straighter into the braking, but I guess I take a little bit of a shorter distance and I go diagonally across the track. And let's see. This part is all straight. It's much wider entry, much wider turn than you do. Just you're, it's fine if you need it, but at the end of the day, I think let's look at the corner radius here. Like ultimately, our corner radius is the same, but you're turning in a little bit too late, it seems. And the corner's a little bit deceptive. It's hard to tell, where the middle of it is and when you can start going on full throttle. But I'm just trying to understand why you're having trouble with it. For one thing, definitely, it doesn't look. Sometimes it makes it look like you're turning in too early, and sometimes it makes it look like you're turning in too late. Possibly braking too much, and not getting on the throttle soon enough. But I'm just trying to decipher here. So you have this odd turn. Oh, so here you see the orange line is way higher than yours, is because like you're making a turn at this point. You aim the car towards the outside of the track and then you turn again. So then that's a secondary turn that you're making. Okay, so now we're lined up. At this point, we're lined up for turn 3, the both of us, you and I. And I start the corner much earlier. Basically, I guess my style into turn 3 is that I don't ever really brake straight with a straight line. I actually do have the car turning while braking, and then that causes me to brake less. So I always apply less brake pressure, but I do trail brake into a corner, and this is a corner that requires some trail braking, especially when you do that. So in my case, I don't have braking power, the same braking power that you do, but in the GTE car, I think that you're braking too much. You're braking way too much, and then also at this point, you're gonna need a trail brake, and you're not doing that. And you're off of the brakes completely. On the first lap, you were off the brakes completely, way before the apex. And then on the second one, still a little bit before the apex. And in my case, like you can see, I'm still holding a little bit of brake pressure all the way till out here. But that's in the Porsche. But still, even regardless, even with the GTE car, like you can hold your brake pressure out to like here, I would say. Little bit, like minimal brake pressure. But then that's why you're ending up having to coast so much, because you're not going to be able to go on the throttle until like about here or so. Let's look at our throttle application. So I got off of the brakes and started playing around with the throttle pretty early, and got on the throttle much earlier than you were able to get on the throttle. It's hard to tell, but I mean, there's issues with your line, there's issues with your braking, and there's issues with the throttle. So I mean, in general, like this corner is being completely messed up. Our apex speeds aren't even that far off of each other, despite the fact that I'm in a Porsche Cup car. There's a huge difference in the early part in the braking phase, but then I make it up, and then even though I have a much less grip, and then get on the throttle, and our exit speeds are pretty close to each other. So let's look at the next one.
So and that corner and the first corner into the uphill also is corners I have always messed up. I feel pretty comfortable in that corner.
Okay.
That next right-hander, because now I figured that I can just make a little dip on the brake and it shoots the nose in.
Yeah.
And I can. And then the next corner is when you. It takes some time to. I think I have the problem with it is that the banking fools me to have too less of a speed, maybe, or just by that my line is completely off, because I see that when I raced in the Mazda Cup, when I started to do this, I lost tremendous of speed up the hill. Everyone was taking me into the turn 6, the kink. So obviously a very big problem having the speed with me in that corner.
Yeah, so for comparison, like it's not a huge difference. Again, we're talking about different cars, but the time coasting, for my lap it was 4.2, and then you were at 6.1 and 5.4 seconds, and so
Wow.
I'm coasting 4.5% of the lap, but again, different car. But I've seen when I do have comparison between you and I in the same car, your fuel usage per lap is way lower than mine, and it's all due to the coasting.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's a good thing if you can get the lap time, but
Yeah,
as long
I
as it
don't.
doesn't, as long as it doesn't sacrifice the lap time, you're okay. So
Hmm.
so is this the corner that you're talking about that you're struggling a little bit
Yeah,
with?
yeah, yeah. Well, I got it better now than I ever done before, but still, I think I can sometimes feel like a make or break the lap time, especially in that corner.
Yeah. Well, again, so one important thing is the banking to realize that we have banking offered to us. That usually always means that yeah, you wanna and then the banking is not exactly it feels like it's not. So getting down to the apex, getting down to the curb is critical. And I see that the three of us did it. So we're right on top of each other, especially at the most critical point. Being
Hmm.
on that curb is absolutely well, there is more grip down there. So it just you need to get the car in there and sucked into that curb. So then that's good. Then you can always get on the throttle sooner. But it looks like your throttle application is good, strong, and confident. Um, all of us are the three of us are applying pretty hard throttle at around the same point, just a touch past the apex of the corner. So that
Hmm.
looks good. Where could one make up time? Your steering looks smooth. The release looks smooth. Um, Obviously, you brake later, and then again, there's quite a lot of coasting. Um, so this is the coasting flags. I guess the orange would be my coast, and it's a very dark green and white that are your laps shown in this graph right here. And you see that I don't coast until this last little bit, and then I get on the throttle, but you start
Hmm.
coasting way earlier. So can there anything be improved on that? I also look at the let's look at the total G's. Um, it's
I have a
unfortunate that
dip.
there's so much orange. Yeah. So you see, like in my case,
You can,
I
you
don't
can
have. You're
if
good.
you can make everything a different color. You know that,
That's
yes?
true. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Okay, there we go. In my case, what you would expect to see since this this corner has banking, is that you're gonna have your longitudinal G is going to be at a certain point, and then as soon as you get into the corner, you're going to have uh, increase in lateral G because of the fact that you can go through there a little bit faster. So that's what
Mm.
we expect to see. So we're going to be braking, and if you look at the orange one, it's around 1.5 G, which is around the limit of what it can do, and then it starts going up as I get mid corner, and then start getting closer to 2 G. Um, and in your case, what we see is that yeah, it ends up being that we have a dip. So you start braking and you start achieving around 2.1 Gs, and then we go down to about 1.1 G. So losing about a G
Hmm.
because we're turning in, but like you're getting the most out of your braking, but it seems like I mean it's a negligible. It's a very tiny difference, but it needs to be carried a little bit further. You can brake a little bit later and do a better job of blending it in and trail braking deeper into a corner where
Hmm.
you're going to be like you can see in my case in my braking that I ended up taking the brake a lot further than you did. This is the difference of this is at 1490 meters and this is at 1470. So 20 meters, about 15 meters later, I'm holding the brakes still.
Hmm.
Um, so that's where the blend comes in. At this blend point, where both of us are turning in, I'm holding way more brake pressure than you are. And that's the reason why the dip is not there in my trace, but yours is showing, that you're losing a G there and then gaining back, and then, mid corner you're at 2.3 Gs. But I guess to improve this corner, you have to try to find a way to trail brake a little bit more,
And brake later.
and then that means brake later.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving up a little bit of time there. How do you feel about this one?
It's a corner that was surprisingly good in a way before because now I know where to point the car. The big problem I had with this before is like I didn't know. I was driving it blindly in a way, so I didn't hit the apex correctly before. But now I feel that because of the pedals, so that they don't surprise me so much anymore. So I have it feels that I have more control into the corner, so I can shoot out of it.
Well, there might be something issue here because I noticed that in the GT3 car, in the Cup car, like look at our apex speeds. They're about the same. That should not be the case, considering that it's such a fast corner and everything, with all the downforce and all the tire and everything. If the two cars are running the same apex speed, then probably you should be running faster. Let's look at the lateral G.
Because I see that.
Well, you had a bad lap. So the green lap, the one that's showing green, was a way worse lap than the white one. Your exit speed was terrible, but your lateral G was the same as mine. So that should not be. But I could see that there was an issue here. Like you can see the corner radius. Look at the green one. It goes up and then it goes back down again. It's not very smooth at all. There was some kind of correction there.
Hit the curb maybe.
Yeah, you can see you had a correction there with the steering. Your steering came back to the right. You had to catch the car, I guess.
So probably when I hit the curb, because I tried to push the car as close to the curb as possible, so I can just shoot out. But if you overdo it and you hit the curbs, you're off. It's.
I'm gonna guess that you're not carrying enough speed through here anyway. Your apex speed is probably a little bit low because of the fact that it should be at least a little bit higher than the GT3 Cup car. The coasting, obviously coasting through this corner is a lot more acceptable. Getting on the throttle early is very important. And then again, it shows it on the green lap that you got on the throttle much later. But depending on the car and the amount of rotation that you have, you want to be on the throttle, even before the apex. Like when I drove the Skip Barber car, no matter what you did, like if you screwed up the corner, like the entry, and you screwed up the brakes and you were carrying too much speed, but you saw that you were going to miss the corner or that something was going to be wrong, like no matter what, you have to be on the throttle before the apex because the car rotates so much when you're off throttle that it was just going to be an instant spin. So no matter what, depending on the car sometimes you have to be on the throttle, but these cars don't turn that way, so it's fine. We can go to throttle either perfectly at the apex or just a little bit before the apex, but you definitely, like, this is a case where we all have to be hitting the throttle, smashing the throttle pretty hard at the apex or right before it. So I'm going to place this cursor at the point where we go full throttle, or like I hit full throttle there and you hit it just a touch later, but we're practically there. And where are we on the racetrack? So this is still before, it looks like maybe at the curb. Yeah, like right at the middle of the curb. So that's where we need to be. So the throttle application is fine, but it just seems to me like maybe the speed is a little bit low and you can still carry a little bit more speed through there.
It's a scary corner.
Yeah, it's the scariest corner there at the entire track, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
There's a pretty big risk. And it's scary in real life, too.
I have destroyed many races there on that curb, especially in the MX-5 when I was driving there. And Skip Barber also, for that matter. So I think it's now sits in me that, like, be careful, and then you get over careful. And that hurts the speed, obviously, very much. So, okay, I need to work on that.
As far as the brakes into the corkscrew, obviously you do a good job. I know what you're doing here with the dip in the braking pressure, and we both kind of like do it at the same point. So I know what's going on there. Um, let's see. Here you can see that characteristic like trail brake, like on the
Mm.
Porsche, where I'm still holding just a tiny bit of brake pressure to get the car to rotate. That's fine though. Your brake release is okay there. Our apex speeds, obviously yours is again going to be a little bit faster. You have more grip everywhere. So
Mm.
this is more of what we expect to see even at the other curve that we were just at.
Mm. Mm.
You know, we should be seeing that. Good job. You know, this is a tough corner, and right here I see that you started having like a little bit of brake lockup also. So then that's why you reacted. Every single time maybe you're having just a little bit of brake lockup, so you're releasing the brakes a little bit and playing around with it. So it's good what you're doing. Your brake pressure changes are justified, and
Mm.
and no excessive brake lockup into the corner. So this is a tough corner, obviously, to judge because there's a lot of things going on. So it's tough to tell with the telemetry. But just looking at the speeds and everything, nothing immediately jumps out. Let's look at your line.
Mm.
The second one is a little bit better. I would say, oh, maybe the first one. You can see we do, both of us do a good job. Like our entry, our corner entry on the second lap that you did, the more recent one, the last lap that you
Mhm.
did, is exactly the same as mine. And then we both turn in, but then you have a big, I guess you almost like carried a little bit the turn. You straightened out the steering wheel a lot here, a lot more between the two corners. So this is where the radius goes up considerably. So now you're steering and your car is going a little bit straighter than it was on the previous lap. And then what I'm doing, and then we turn in again,
Mhm.
and then you had a little bit later of a turn in point, and then we release. The only thing I can see about your line, I don't know. Like I noticed, like here, look at this point where you're much further towards the outside of the racetrack than I am.
Mhm.
Why is the car going out like that? Are you letting the car go out there, or is the car taking you and you're just letting it because that's where it really wants to go?
I think I'm letting it go because I try to go as early as possible, like always on the throttle, and less steering angle means less chance of snappy oversteers, especially down the hill like that. So because I think I do it because the speed level, because I have downforce to actually go around and then shoot the car on the other side without making it troubly. If it's correct or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I think it probably is just because of the fact that the car is different and yeah, you do have a lot more horsepower and carrying more speed through there where it may take you out there. Sometimes people want to go out there, we always want to use the entire racetrack, but the thing is that in some cases you're just driving further for no reason. And depending on the car, like in the MX, like the slower and the less horsepower the car is, the less we need to be using the entire track because now you're just driving further.
yes,
Um, so it depends. So this is the exit at that corner is one of those corners where if you're in an MX-5, people want to go all the way to the edge of the racetrack. It's like, well, it's not really necessary. Like unless if you carried so much speed through there and you really nailed it and it really takes you out there. But only go out there if you need to. Don't arbitrarily go to the edge of the racetrack just because, hey, this is the line that I need to be taking. That's not true. You want to drive the shortest path and the largest radiuses, but when we get to higher levels of performance and everything, we're definitely looking for every little bit, and sometimes we're just driving further for no reason. And then so you just have to be sure that there's a good reason why you're going out there. Like you can see with the Porsche Cup car, I don't have to go all the way to the edge of the racetrack. And same thing like in the Skip Barber car or a Mazda or a MX-5,
Mm.
either one of those cars typically don't need to go all the way to the edge of a racetrack unless if on a certain lap, you did something through a corkscrew where it actually, would have been slower to pinch the car off and have it exit. But if you have a good release on the steering wheel and the steering wheel's straight, it's straight. And if you land in the middle of a racetrack, then that's where you landed.
Mm.
Um, because you can
Because
see that we have a different driving line and we end up at a different place, but my steering is just a little bit straighter in this case. Like my radius is a little bit larger than yours, and in the blue line, which is further out, like your furthest out line here is this one, which is the green. So that's the one that's furthest on the outside of the racetrack, but the orange line has a larger radius in all those cases, and I go straight earlier, but that's because my car's not asking for it. I did
mm,
carry less speed, I have less power, I'm full throttle, but it doesn't need it, so I can straighten out. I'm already straight, so I'm not. I'm holding a tighter line, but I'm not pinching or losing any power. I'm not losing a forward acceleration. My car's straighter than yours is. I have a wider radius, and I'm completely straight, just a little bit earlier. But
mm,
again, that's the difference of the car. So you just need to make sure that you're justified, but you're holding the same amount of effort, I guess, than I am. So I think that shows that okay, your line is actually good. Just don't just keep that in mind whenever you're driving. That everywhere that you go on the racetrack kind of has to be for a reason. And then your entry into the rainy curve is good. This is a place that you see everybody kind of taking a different line,
oh
and
yeah.
it seems like your line and my line are kind of similar to each other, especially on the entry, which is very different. Some people like to go all the way to the edge of the racetrack, which again is something that you're kind of like taught to do, and they think it's faster. Maybe it is for them, but it's definitely not for me. And regardless, I like to take the real line. Usually, if you look at video, most of the time you'll see that everybody kind of starts way lower and almost towards the middle of the
Yeah,
racetrack,
I've seen that.
and it's just dirtier out there. Of course, if you ran over it, it'd be cleaner, but um, yeah, the curve is just like that. So there's a line. I don't know what would happen if somebody tried to run the iRacing line, but that's just how the line is, and that's what I'm going to run on iRacing also. So
Mm.
I don't like to
Uh,
be all the way on the white curb on the entry. It seems like you don't either, but let's see.
uh,
This is a case where actually I did drive pretty far to the edge of the racetrack. We carry the same amount of radius anyway, but this time I went out further than I think I usually like to do.
because I studied that track. When I do not understand how to drive the track, I use real life references, and just to see like which kind of lines they're taking. And as you said, that I actually never seen anyone in real life take this high line, and maybe because before they didn't have that typical physics that they have now in iRacing, so it maybe worked. But now the physics is more like it feels like you are more dependent on actually how the track is laid out. Turn one in Lime Rock, for instance, everyone before was like outside,
Mm.
outside. And when I see the track now, the banking of the track is like this, and then you have a flat area. Seems like on top of where the banking actually is. And before you could drive there and be fast, but now it seems like if you drive too far off, you will just get slower because you don't have the banking helping the car anymore. And it seems like all the updates they have made for everything, that those kind of things are more in play now than it was used to be. Just like the first corner of Watkins Glen, people almost drive off. They were off the track in a big area. They are not. When I started iRacing in 2011, everyone was driving much further out in that corner than they are doing now.
Turn one.
Turn one at Watkins
Yeah.
Glen, the runoff area there. it's so now it's obviously something that is pulled iRacing closer to reality of the driving lines
Yeah.
than it was before, and those people that maybe is stuck a little bit in the old way
Mm.
still do those high lines, but as you said, where the grip is where the grip is.
Yeah, definitely in
If
real life for
it's
sure. So
yeah,
let's
and it
look at
seems like also that that also start to come into iRacing also that kind of thing that
yeah.
you have the grip here, so you need to drive there.
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
know.
I saw a lot of that one time, not too long ago. I did a race at Sebring, and I was happy to see that if I missed my entry and I went a little wide, marbles, and yeah, the grip was gone, and you know, you'd just be dancing and sliding around through there, and that's very realistic. But I just don't see it happening at every racetrack. But it
Uh,
was really rubbered up. I don't know why, but the track was extremely dirty on the outside, and you could feel it, and you could see it too. But
mm,
that's the only time that I remember seeing a track like that where there was a lot of marbles
mm,
offline. So breaking into the last corner, into the last hairpin, I see that I think you're trying to do the work on your brake release, and
mhm,
you're trying to improve on that. And I see here like on the green one on that lap, on your brake
mhm,
release here, you know, you go down to almost zero, and then you come back up again on the brake pressure. Um, this one's just going to show us the brakes. So up here, you can see where you went down and then up again and carried a little bit more brake. So
mm,
that's good. That's much better than on the white one. So comparing the two laps here, first of all, let's look at the total G. So the total G, you start releasing the brakes on the white lap, which was earlier,
mm,
not the fastest lap that you did. You start releasing the brakes earlier, so then that
mm,
causes that dip in the total G
mhm,
because we're still kind of going straight and not turning in the steering wheel anyway. So just losing brake pressure for nothing. And then you get off the brake pretty aggressively, and then are off the brakes entirely here. There's a huge difference between in the Porsche Cup car and the brake pressure that I have at this point. At this point, where you're already off the brakes, I'm at 20% brake, and I'm carrying that brake all the way. And you see, in my case, there's no coast at all. This
mm,
is when I'm
mm,
getting off the brake, and this is where I'm getting on the throttle. It's like a meter.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
they're tied in together. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, sometimes you're coasting. In your case, on the white lap, at least you didn't coast that much. You did get on the throttle pretty soon, and you got on the throttle sooner than on the other ones. Um, which one was faster? Well, let's see. The green one was faster on the entry. You braked a little bit less, but more consistently, which is the idea. I mean, like, I don't want you to hold more brake because that just means slowing down, but that means you have to either get on the brake later or brake less. So in this
mhm,
case, on this phase, like at this point into the braking zone, you're braking less. You have less brake pressure, 58% versus 66%. So you're almost 10 per, you're like 7% less. And then we transition through here. At this point, you know, now we're at the same brake pressure, 61, and then here you're still holding in the 60s. So the entire time you're holding about 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, much more efficient, and you can see that we're carrying more speed. So the entire time since the point that you both got on the brake, same exact identical point, you've been carrying
mhm,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're getting faster, 8, 10, 10, 10 kilometers per hour more speed.
mm.
And then the other one reached, I guess, the apex a little bit, or your apex point where you started turning your minimum speed a little bit earlier, and then got on the throttle just a little bit sooner. But that you were carrying less speed. Which one was faster?
In that corner, I like to throw the car
Yeah,
in a little
green.
bit.
Yeah, yeah. The green lap was faster,
Mhm,
especially in and then through the exit. So it was faster, just even despite the fact that you got on the brakes, just on the throttle a little bit lower later. Looking at the steering, Yeah, I mean, your apex speed was a little bit lower and a little bit lower earlier, so you were able to like steer in the same. And I can see that, yeah, you kind of turn in nice and aggressively. You hold your steering angle, it's very smooth. And then you were able to straighten out the steering wheel just a little bit sooner, which also allowed you to get on the throttle sooner and everything. Let's see at what point you went to full throttle. 78, 63, 62. So you went on the throttle at the same point when you had the same amount of lateral G. You were at 63%. Sometimes I also see an inconsistency with what I call the throttle acceptance. You have this channel, or don't you?
No.
No.
I ponder myself like, maybe it works the same way as the brake thing.
Yeah, no. So the throttle acceptance is a little bit easier on the math, but basically what it calculates is what's your maximum lateral G for the corner. So whatever it is, like in this case, like for this corner, we can see like it's somewhere around 2. Okay, so it saves that number, 2 Gs, and then it finds when is the point that you go full throttle. So let's look at the green lap. So the green, you're at full throttle at 0.97 Gs.
Okay, wait. Where are 0? Oh.
I'm looking here at the bottom of the lat of the friction circle. I can see. So I put the cursor.
Okay.
I put the cursor here at the full throttle point for the green one at 100% throttle, or you can set it to whatever number you want. But at 100% throttle, you're at 0.98 Gs. So if your maximum G was around 2, and you start going to full, and you're at full throttle at 1 G, like what percentage is your full throttle lateral G of your maximum lateral G? If you were
okay,
it would be
with you.
so the throttle acceptance would be 100% if you were at 2 Gs and you went to full throttle. At that point, you would be at 100%. That's 100% of your cornering load is at the point that you're going full throttle. So you're accepting that, and the car can take it. Not possible, right? Because then that would mean that it is possible to have, but that would also mean that you're not at the cornering limit. So when we go to full throttle, usually there's a certain point that we should be at, and this number is going to tell us 2 things. I mean, if it's too high, that means that you're probably not getting maximum cornering G that the car should have, and if it's too low, you're getting on the throttle too late. And one thing I see is a couple things that this number is obviously going to be dependent on the corner itself, so you can't just compare every turn, and it's also going to be it's dependent on a lot of things. But sometimes I use it and I see inconsistencies where I think maybe in this type of corner it should be higher, where it's not, or not. So again, remember that we don't we're not driving the same car. But for example, in my case, like on my lap, 78%. So whatever my lateral G was, I got on the throttle sooner, and I was carrying more lateral G when I did than yours. But you can see that they're the same. Both of your laps in this case are the same. So at least consistency is also very important. That doesn't mean that yes, maybe you can get on the throttle sooner, but some corners, like I don't think that in this case you can get on the throttle any sooner, knowing the nature of this corner. And I think that this is just a difference of our cars. But in some corners, like definitely let's look at the corner that I think you're struggling with most, which is 4. Let's see. Here, I guess you were able to get on the throttle a little bit sooner with the lateral Gs, but I guess that's not really a sign of where we're at. Maybe you're getting on the throttle, but your whole corner's moved a little bit. I think that you're kind of braking too late and turning in maybe a little bit too
abruptly, maybe.
Not at the right place. Maybe I'm not sure if it's too early or too late, but it's the whole thing is screwed up. Like the braking, the throttle, and the turning are screwed up. But at least you are pulling a lot of G when you're getting on the throttle, so that's good.
So that throttle application is that I understand you, because I found in some of the books I read about getting on the throttle when you are at 80% of your lateral Gs. Is that
So that's going to be the number, but
that's the
the same
calculation you
math.
have there?
Yeah, probably the
Ah,
same
okay.
math.
Oh.
But it's car dependent. So it's 80% of your lateral G, but it depends on what car it is. If it's a Formula One car, it's going to be a lot lower. If it's a MX5 Cup, it's going to be a lot higher. So if a MX5 Cup car, yeah, you should be doing like 90% or whatever. If it's a go-kart that you were driving at Mazda Raceway, you'd probably be at near 100.
Mm,
You know.
mm.
But the more power you have, the lower the throttle acceptance should be. So
Ah,
let's go through the lap real quick, and then we're gonna have to wrap this up. But
sure.
so good. So you see, like through turn two, you're at 86 and 80.
Hmm.
Then the following corner, we already saw that one. It was 75, 78. So that's good. We'll just look for anything that stands out.
Hmm.
82. This corner is one that should be pretty high. Like in the Porsche Cup car, I did 88. Here, 82 and 77. So a little bit of a mistake there. I guess we're able to get it on the throttle very efficiently. Here, this corner is also going to be very high because of the banking. So that's
Hmm.
going to screw up the math a little bit because we have such high lateral load and we can get on the
Hmm.
throttle so soon. So 94, 90, 88. So that's good. Let's see this one, what that's going to look like. Like in my case, it was 98. Yeah,
Oh.
look at that, 51 and 58. So that's a
Ah.
highlight of, again, our apex speeds are the same. No way.
Mm.
I'm in a Porsche. Like you should not have the same apex speed as me. Such a fast corner. We're going 150 kph, so we know the amount of downforce that car has at 150. That's a high downforce corner. And yeah, your throttle acceptance is at 50%. That's a red flag.
Hmm. Hmm.
So got to work there.
Hmm.
The corkscrew doesn't really count because that's a funky turn.
Hmm.
Um, then the rainy curve. Let's look at it. 60, 65 and 66. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on your speed and everything. Like this is also a funny turn. So I can see somebody getting on the throttle really early and carrying a lot of speed and not being quite 100% throttle. And I forget what I set it to. So the thing is, I don't think I have it set to exactly 100%, but maybe like 95% throttle. And I can see like here you're at your throttle position is around 80 and you're holding it there, which is also very acceptable and very quick. So that might be screwing up the results a little bit. It's not absolutely necessary. One person could be at 95 and be so early, and other person can be 100%, but like a lot later, and
Hmm.
you could still end up getting the same result. So that's okay.
Thank you, love.
That's not an important one.
I forgot. I use the banking to turn the car and just to step on
Yeah,
the brakes to not overwork the tires,
yeah.
and that worked. So just plant the nose down so I don't get understeer and overheat the tires, and it works better than before.
That sounds good.
Hmm.
So at
Because
this,
I think. Hmm?
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like in this corner, you made a mistake clearly, especially on the white lap. So you couldn't get on the throttle at all. But on the green lap, it's good. You're getting on the throttle. It seems like you're a little bit timid. This is another turn that I think the track kind of falls away from you
Yeah.
towards the exit, so you don't want to go too far. But
I also a corner that I've been struggling with because I really don't understand how to take it. Do I let them brake late and chop it in, or just brake a little early and shoot into the corner? Because
which one was which here?
no, yeah, just I'm trying to figure out how to take the corner.
Uh-huh.
I always struggle with that corner. It's those three corners that I really struggle with.
So which technique do you think that you used here?
I think I try to brake a little early and just turn the car in so it don't snap.
Usually that's what
Because
I do. I usually turn in early, and I usually brake early, like right at. I think we're braking at the same place. No, I guess we're braking. I'm braking earlier, but again, Porsche. I'm braking a little bit earlier, but I brake usually where the curb starts, depending on the car.
Yeah.
and then just trail brake a little bit, very smooth, very tight, a little bit of brake. Like let's look at my braking. So I brake a lot harder, Porsche,
Mhm.
and then I'm carrying the brake again. Like even though I started way earlier and everything, like at this point I'm still carrying just a little bit more brake, where you're not obviously at zero. And but I mean I like this. Like I'm not saying brake harder brake or anything like that. If I was in that car, I would probably have the same amount of brake pressure as you, or maybe just a tiny bit less, and I would carry it just a little bit further. And then let's see the throttle. So we're off the brakes, and we're all so look at this. This is at least good, and I think interesting that the three of us are coasting the same amount at least in this corner. So
Hmm.
right on top of each other, the coast. All of us are off throttle, just letting the car keep its momentum up, and then we go to throttle.
Because the entry on this corner, I've seen from all the times I have driven it that I want to brake so as late as possible, and it just either it makes the car understeer, and so
Yeah.
you track out on the outside, or you have a oversteer into it, and it just mess up the corner for you.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a momentum corner where I would rather carry as much speed through it. And then even if I have to get on full throttle a little bit later where my throttle acceptance looks pretty low,
Hmm.
it'll be much better if I can get on the throttle early, but very smoothly, very little, going up gradually. Um, like we both on the three laps, like we did the exact same thing, coasted the same
Hmm.
place, went on the throttle same place. It's just the white one is there's some kind of issue there, understeer. I don't know. The line seems to be about the same, so something happened there. But on the other one, you go to throttle, and the only thing is here that you're a little bit timid. I think worried about the curb or something, so you're not quite full throttle yet. So I don't know if you're spotting the exit and you're worried that you're going to go over the curb or not. I don't know if
Probably something in that direction, because
or if
that's
the
the
car's
only.
understeering on throttle like a lot.
I
Is it rotating on
as a
throttle or is it understeering?
No, it depends a little bit on how how I point the nose, but I think it's pretty balanced actually,
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's
neutral.
it's a little bit timid, but I think is that you're probably afraid of the track and the exit than the car actually doing something on you the way that this looks. Like when
Because this
somebody's reacting to something, it usually ends up looking a little bit more abrupt, but it's just a tiny bit timid. I'm not sure. But everything else in the corner I think looks fine to me. Um, your lateral G, let's look at that real quick. And we don't see any dips at all. Like it's nice, it's flat. When we catch the banking, look at this. Yeah,
mm,
it's perfectly flat. That's as
mm,
good as it's gonna get. And then when we catch the banking here, the G's go up.
sure.
But that's fine. Like right around here, it's perfect. Yeah. So I mean, the speed. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that you're giving up that much time here.
I just need to unlearn my fear of this track, I think.
Yeah, and then just be a little bit more confident on the exit and make sure that you find a way to get on the throttle with a little bit more confidence. And you had like a little bit of a moment here. I see that you corrected on the steering, so that's part of the reason why the white lap, the throttle came so late. You had
Yeah,
a
always there.
correction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Let's
That
see the oversteer. What caused the oversteer? So we determined now that you had an oversteer moment.
probably
It it,
tur
it wasn't caused by the
early,
brakes because you're
no,
actually holding less brake.
early turning maybe. Too early
Yeah,
turning
that
maybe.
could be it. So we're going straight. We're going straight. We're going straight. We're going straight. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what's the cause. The turn in is definitely very close to each other. I really
Mm.
need to adjust this steering.
Because that's the problem I have, in general, have had with this corner, that I many times turn in too early, so I jump over the curb. But because it seems to me that this corner is very, very critical, that it's no room for, it doesn't forgive you.
Yeah.
If you don't push it correctly into either you will track out on the other side, or you will jump over the curb.
Let's look at something else real quick. I'm just trying to find the exact point where the car started to rotate on you. If it started earlier or not, but it doesn't look like it. So here's where we start. This is the point where we start to oversteer. What are you doing with your inputs? I mean, perhaps the most I can say is that there was a moment before that when you started your turn in, but you've been on the brakes where you did have a little bit more steering input and then you started taking it off, but then the car probably already started its rotational momentum. That corner definitely has a case where if you know how you're swinging from right side of the racetrack to the left side of the racetrack, and then you turn in. So sometimes if somebody does that a little bit too abruptly, like you can continue like you can have a spin that's caused by that transition from one side of the racetrack to the other, where like you have rotational momentum, and then you turn the steering wheel a little bit more, and like depending on the type of car, it starts to go, and then it'll result in a spin much later on, but it really started much earlier because of a pendulum-like effect of the car just rotating. Um, that's not the case that you're gonna have with the Ford GT because it has such a high polar moment of inertia, but um, that corner kind of always induces that type of effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, judging by the corner radius and a couple other little factors, you're turning in a little bit more abruptly. Like here, where are we? We're about on the entry. So let's follow
Mm-hmm.
the entry of the right before you start getting off the brakes, and on the white line here, you start getting much lower where you're turning in already. I guess you're turning the steering wheel in, and this is a huge difference. This is where we see the biggest difference between the two of them. And then after that, it kind of wants to be the same. So it seems like maybe the turn in started back here, and that's what really got the car swinging. And because of the banking and the radius of the corner and everything, I guess mistakes result in an error much later, but where they start is much earlier because of that slow pendulum swing effect. So
Mm-hmm.
it does seem like it was the early turn in that caused it. And then around this point is where you start having the oversteer, and then you start correcting for it here.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like, in general, like you can see that on the green line, you started much earlier. Like way earlier. There was like a little bit of a turn that was made here. I'm looking at the corner radius here, so you can see that when it's infinity, that means that you're going straight, right? So we're going straight. It's off the chart, and then there's a turn here that has a radius. It's about 260 meters of radius, and then it kind of flattens out a little bit, and then you hold it, and then you start really turning in, and then we have our actual apex point, which is here, and that's the 75-meter radius point. But you started much sooner. That's the smoother one, and then you brought it down. Okay, that's a little bit of a correction that you did with the steering, and then it kind of went straight for, or it kind of held its radius, a constant radius. You're still turning, but you're holding a radius there, and then you start turning a little bit more again with the steering wheel. So you can see in the steering wheel angle here that you start steering, you start turning the steering wheel, and then you get off the steering wheel a little bit, but you're still turning, and now you start turning a little bit more. And it seems like you had a very abrupt turn in back here with the white trace, which resulted in the car here. You have a tighter radius that you're driving. Yeah, it's a little bit untidy. In general, I can see that your steering, I mean, your braking and your throttle application are very, very smooth. Places where I see some unsmoothness sometimes is with the things that you do in the corner radius. Like, look at this. The white one was obviously not a very pretty one. Those look fine. Here again, like the green one is very untidy, so there's a lot of steering correction going on there and oversteer, but that's fine. Legitimate oversteer is okay. This is through the first few corners, and this is what you're doing on the straightaway here to try to get to, that's turn 3. And yeah, I'm not so sure about the line there. That's the place that you have to work on the most. Anyway, so to summarize, your braking is looking good. Keep on working on trying to release the brake smoother and trail brake just a little bit more, and try to create that little bit of a tail into your braking. Then that's going to be another game changer for you. You'll see a big improvement on performance if you can figure out a way to produce a little bit of a tail on your braking. It looks like this is a better case, but you know that looks kind of like that. You did it kind of there, but sometimes it ends a little bit more abrupt. Like here, this type of thing, if you can grow that tail, work on it and make it better, and have something more like that, that's going to help your rotation through the corners and stuff. Sometimes you have it, but sometimes it's not there. Like here's a case where neither of us do it, but I just carry the braking deeper into the corner. So to summarize, yeah, keep on working on that. Turn 3, you need to work on your line, you need to work on your braking and your throttle, but it's completely wrong. For turn 5, find a way to brake just a tiny bit deeper and not have this big dip in the G's. Brake a little bit deeper and hold the brakes deeper into the apex. Turn 6, completely screwed up. You got to carry more speed through there. Maybe what to do. I'm not so sure that you're braking too much. And then we got to look at the setup. But again, this is a case where if it's understeering and you really can't carry that much more speed through there, then you know the rake part might be part of the reason, because this is one of the fastest corners on the racetrack. And if you're not pulling the G's through there because you're understeering, then we need to move the aero balance.
It doesn't understeer actually. That's why one of the reasons why I lower the rear to make it more stable through that corner, so it will not oversteer for me, because that's the problem. What it does, it oversteered.
Okay. And then just keep an eye out on your throttle usage and make sure that you're trying to get to the throttle as confidently as possible, like in the exit of this corner, where it just looks a little bit timid. I don't have an explanation of whether or not the car was understeering or not, but it looks to me like you're scared of the exit curb, and you're waiting to make sure that you're past it and you're safe to go 100% throttle.
Yeah. That's the old fears that I have. It's just implanted in my nerves, I guess, because when you drive the rookie class, you only drive at 2 tracks. It's Laguna and Lime Rock, so I have exceptionally a lot of laps there, but I also have a lot of records, especially at Laguna Seca, the turn 6 and that corner, especially those 2 that has broken my race many times, because they just missed it by that much, but that's enough to break everything, you know.